Welcome everyone. I think it's the time to start. Let me just check if there is anyone else coming to see this presentation about the worst language I know. So no one else, looks like. At the beginning, small disclaimer. This is not the presentation about the worst language that exists in the world. This is just the worst language that I know. And I don't know many languages. I'm just saying it is worse than Java and a couple other JVM languages. So don't hate me for the title. And let's proceed with the very basic command that you very often type in the console. Who am I? I'm a trainer in Luxoft Training Center. I'm contributor to Stack Overflow, so open source projects. My main focus in Luxoft is on the code quality. And during last 6 years, I was mostly concerned about Java, Groovy, and others, but Bosh was always there. I was not hired as a Bosh developer. Bosh was not in my job description at all. Almost no one claims we want to hire developers and Bosh on the first place, you'll be using Bosh, right? But it is still there all the time. We kind of try to avoid it, but we can't. So that's why I get interest into that topic, because Bosh was always standing out regarding quality, and I wanted to understand why and what we can do to fix it. Just a reminder about Slido. You may ask questions there throughout the presentation. I'll answer them at the end. So one of my first adventures with the Bosh was create a script to download feeds. And it had just one parameter, target directory. So we wrote pretty well tested script that was just reading this one parameter and going to some web page, downloading the files, unpacking them, but we wanted to do it really well. So we noticed that if it was once run, it would override the results. So we thought, okay, it would be good to make it idempotent and clean everything in this target directory. We documented that it should be some temporary special directory where all fields will be downloaded. And our prod services guys, they took this script and they thought, well, we need to pick some directory. What's the best directory that comes to your mind? Home, exactly. And those guys ran the script on the home. Everything from home was deleted. And actually, this guy was working in company for, I don't know, 20 years. And he was keeping for those 20 years all the documents there in home. And they all went away. This was my first biggest mistake in the Bosh scripting. And actually, after this, after a couple of years, we're sitting in the open space, coding something in JVM, right? And then one guy just told, go to Stack Overflow. See, they're in all the news right now, all around the world, Stack Overflow is on the main pages. It says that man accidentally deleted his entire company with a Bosh script. So we all went to Stack Overflow page. We checked what's happened. So he says he had 1,500 customers and some Ansible script that was run on all servers in his company. And he just invoked rm minus rf with one variable / another variable. But due to some bug, those variables happened to be undefined. And the great default behavior of Bosh is to not worry developer when the variable is undefined, just enter empty string and proceed. So he lost his entire company. Every server was just cleared, including backup servers, because this was maintenance script everywhere. And the greatest were the comments, right? He was asking for technical advice, but those guys said, okay, guy, you rather need a lawyer. How to explain that you lost our data, because there is no recovery. You really nuked your entire company. Your company is now essentially dead, right? Just for the simple Bosh script mistake for using undefined variables. After some time, it was discovered that it was hoax, yeah? This was not true story. However, it reminded me about Russian roulette for sysadmin, which is mostly enjoyable for the people. Just 1 out of 6 times it may destroy you, right? But mostly it's fine. So lesson learned is after this story is that we should override Bosh defaults because they're really poor. We shouldn't use undefined variables, and this could be achieved by this command. And you need to know it by heart or know that it exists in order to use it. That's why I'm here to tell you. Again, sometime later in the open space, one colleague comes to me and says, while loop in Bosh doesn't work for me. And I say, man, you cannot write a while loop in Bosh? Just Google it, how to do it. And he said, I spent a lot of time Googling it. I did exactly as in tutorial, it doesn't work. I'm getting unexpected end of file. Oh man. Then I entered the same pages I reviewed, and indeed, everything is correct. This is correct while loop. I spent quite a time analyzing, but there is nothing wrong with it. Can you see anything wrong with this while loop? Semicolon, actually it's fine, and everywhere could be missing. So there is no issue actually. So I took this script and ran on my machine, and it works. And I said, oh, what's the language that on my colleagues' machines doesn't work, and on my machine it works? So, okay, immediately we compared the Bosh version, but it was the same. Same Bosh version, same loop. On one machine it works, on another it don't. And there is some syntax error. Then I went to this guy, and I told him, show me the script. And okay, I have it in Notepad. And there is some tiny button at the top, show non-printable characters. I press it, and I discovered CR-LF instead of Aleph. And Bosh is so great language that it doesn't say just do not use carriage return because you'll get into trouble. It just thinks it's part of your code, and some weird stuff may happen. And the worst thing is that it is not Googleable at all. For example, by just having this one line Bosh script, just set -o, no unset. If you save this file with carriage return line-ending character, you will get error out of the script that no one ever get ever, right? It says 0 results. How often you get that page from Google recently? Every year, maybe you write something weird, yeah, if you're drunk, but otherwise, whatever your computer prints, it is Googleable. But Bosh errors are not, right? Just because you use carriage return character. So if you cannot Google your issue, just display those characters. So all in all, if the Krakow was built by Bosh programmers, probably it would look like that, right? 6 skeletors everywhere, from Mogilskie to Grzegórzeckie, and maybe just one Błękitek standing there. One solid piece of code, but all the rest would have serious problems. Moreover, it is just ugly language. When I first seen the case statement in Bosh, before knowing the Java one, I said, it cannot be true. Is this really the case? Just parentheses, right parentheses and no left parentheses? Double semicolon? Who invented that weird syntax? But it is real, it is the proper case. So I don't like it, it is just ugly. And this O, ASAC at the end, right? So we had it in 70s in Algol, and apparently this is the source of this convention, but no modern language I know uses this inverted case, ASAC. Same as if, phi. And there are 2 demons of the Bosh that you may already heard about, which are word splitting and globbing, right? Those bring you some thoughts for sure. we are talking so much about them on the code reviews of Bosh, and what it is about. So word splitting may be seen as just removing spaces, right? So echo actually is not invoked with one argument, but multiple arguments, and then it prints these arguments with single spaces instead of multiple, so it just eats spaces. There is more into that, and actually there are some even worse features of the Bosh that we may run into. Let's try, for example, create an array. Just very simple Bosh array. Notice that it isn't created with commas like in all other languages, but just spaces. So we have there GeeCON, Devox, Java Developers Day, and let's just try to print every item out of this array. One of the simplest tasks in any language that could be done. So let's try. We write for goody in so much goodness, echo goody. What we get? So much goodness. Where's the mistake? There is no $sign, so we just printed the variable name out of the table array and no exception. All right, so we add this missing $sign. What do we get? First item, but where are the others? Oh, apparently we need to put a @ within square brackets, right? Okay, so what do we get? GeeCON @ something is still wrong. So let's try harder. How to print every character of an array? Oh yeah, we're missing curly braces. Yeah, with curly braces, it works or it doesn't. Right, someone is showing me those tiny 2 lines that we need to wrap so much goodness, and now only it works. So much celebration just to do simple thing like printing every array. And actually, this is not the proper solution. Because if it contained more than one space, let's say in Java Developers Day, there are 2 spaces intentional, it would eat them. We miss those quotes also while echoing this variable. Another daemon of Bosh, globbing, right? So we use quotes, we ask, please enter file name matching zip, yeah? We just provide a pattern and we just echo this message. And we discover that owner of the script has some cute cats, naked girls on the disk, yeah, so it's a security issue. So there is very nice answer on Stack Overflow regarding the topic of quoting variables. That there are just 3 reasons people don't quote variables. One, first is beginners. They don't know we should teach them. Second, we just forget. And the third is the most interesting. The people that are not convinced, even if we repeat to them, if we hammer them with this information that everything should be quoted in Bosh, they say it is not possible that the Stephen Bourne while creating the Bosh syntax had the intention to quote everything. They just feel it's unintuitive and impossible so that someone creates so stupid language. But that's true. This was designed to always use quotes in the scripts. However ridiculous it sounds. And the explanation for you is like that whenever you don't quote variable, it goes through the process of splitting, word splitting and globbing always. So you have actually 3 functions invoked instead of 1. If you quote, there is just 1 function that is happening. Right? So it could be considered as some improvement, optimization to not invoke those functions, just code everything, and then you get just single invocation. And this is just knowledge in short that was posted as Stack Overflow answer that gives a lot of examples. This is true Stack Overflow answer explaining why you should quote all your variables. Yeah, so I saved roughly half an hour of your life. So hope you'll be grateful for that. Just quote everything and that's it. So there are lots of tricky parts of Bosh. I told you about globbing, word splitting. There are much more. File clobbering sounds ugly, brace expansion, command substitution, many areas like that. And there are also weaknesses of the Bosh as a language. It is just slow, there is no proper exception handling mechanism, no try-catch. Everything is a string. In fact, of course, we have some arithmetic operations, but they are rather hack. Internally, there are still strings. Everything is global, and we don't want that because we very quickly run into the reusability horror. Actually, it's very hard to write any sensible library for the Bosh because it may collide with our code. So it's really tricky. And the best summary of the Bosh weaknesses can be found on this Grayscat wiki, mywiki.org. I just made a screenshot to not quote him exactly, because this guy says that shell functions are totally freaked up. And as a conclusion, he even says that Bosh has so many weaknesses like that that we should put even more attention than to any other language we know. We should very much practice style, consistent style, good formatting, and being aware of those weaknesses in order to write correct code more than in any other language we know. So you could ask, if Bosh is so bad, when to use it? The proper use case for this language is in some simple wrapper scripts with process interactions. When the performance doesn't matter that much, when the code is short and simple, there is a lot of interaction happening with the underlying system. And whenever your script grows or the logic becomes more and more complex, just use other languages. Kotlin, Python, whatever you want. But still, Bosh is useful as a glue only, but we don't have any other glue available on the market. There is no better way to interact with operating system, especially from Linux family, that it is everywhere. For example, you were on the talk about Kotlin most probably. So how to install Kotlin? If you want, invoke Bosh, right? With SDK man. If you were on the talk about Atomist, how to install it? With the Bosh, and so on. So it is language that is supposed to manipulate with files, invoke other commands, perform more complex tasks. There is actually more complication regarding the shell scripting, because the Bosh is one of the implementations of the shell scripts. So Manus A intro says that there are actually many other implementations of shell scripting, and the standard one is called SH. We'll be comparing them soon, but generally if you want to learn more about the Bosh, about scripting, it's good to use those strange commands, help, info, man, but they actually worked. There is some very interesting information there. For example, it says what shells are available. So compare them. Bosh and standard shell. So Bosh is almost everywhere, but it is almost everywhere. There are some very specific environments where it's not available. And the behavior is driven by implementation. While POSIX shell, it is a standard which is portable to all Unix and Linux machines, standardized but very limited. And there could be multiple implementations of it. And actually there are two ways how we could declare shebangs at the beginning of the files. First one, which is bin bash, and second, which is longer. General conclusion after many discussions on the internet is to use the second one. It is more versatile because bin bash location is not standardized, while user bin env it is. So why to use Bosh over POSIX? It has local variables. We don't like global states, so they have a lot of limitations, but at least better than nothing. There are arrays which are ugly, but they are if we need them. There is better test operator. We can do some nicer arithmetics, and that's it. So not really many improvements, but when it's almost everywhere, we can safely assume it's fine. And general impression in the industry is that shell scripts are ugly. This London Knoll noticed that he was browsing some Unix source code, and he said, oh gosh, how ugly could be the shell code if we do not apply any sensible standards and conventions. So what could we do regarding that? If we type just quality command, it won't help. There is nothing like that that is built into Bosh. So hopefully it is easier than preventing the smoke in Krakow. We can, for example, apply rules from the other languages, right? This is the first thing that we can do. Use descriptive names, so no cryptic shortcuts, while Bosh may encourage you to do it, but still don't do it. Use small functions, don't use redundant syntax. And all the other rules from other languages, please apply. This language really needs it, more than others. There are also various style guides. I found at least 6 of them that are mostly similar. They talk about various aspects. So to get your opinion about what is desired and what's not, I would recommend to read a couple of them at least. You may also learn a lot about Bosh from them and learn about weaknesses of the Bosh. And the most popular is Google Style Guide. It looks pretty ugly if you go to this web page, but it contains some useful advices. For example, Google recommends us to only use Bosh. Do not look into other implementations of shell, just for simplicity. Google recommends us to use no extensions if this file is executable, just to follow old Unix tradition. Only if we have shell library, we may put extension. This may be I would say, I would say it is against what we'll know from Windows system, but generally when there is shell and we want to start it, put no extension, and this is a recommended approach. Google also has very controversial advice about comments. It says that we should comment every file with exact documentation what it does. We should also comment every function according to them, specify arguments, returns, and so on. But I would rather disagree with it. This is too verbose, and I think that we should put more into the function names and file names than the comments. But if you do some very mysterious stuff, why not? I think the Google Style Guide specifies pretty good naming convention for the Bosh. Generally use lower snake case for everything. Variable names, method names, just for simplicity. Use local keyword in the functions so that your variables are really local. And upper snake case use only for read-only variables that are constant and won't never change. So there are not that much complex conventions as in Java, for example. More recommendations are: do not use backticks. There have several problems about handling backslashes and nesting. If you want to nest backslashes, you need to put more and more backslashes. 1, then 3, then 5, if you want just to nest 3 of those, which is ugly, while this $ parenthesis works well with it. Conditions, for many reasons, generally being more intuitive, we should use double braces instead of single braces or test command. Test command is a program that is on the system, while double brackets is the built-in, and this built-in behaves just better, so you won't run into that much trouble. And in general, Style Guide says to put every command in separate line, do not use semicolons. However, to follow tradition, all the if statement, for loops, while loops, they have semicolon, and then this keyword then do is on the same line as the beginning of the command. Then the Google style guide says, takes a voice in this holy war between tabs and spaces. They just say, use two spaces, that's all. I wouldn't be so strict, it really doesn't matter, so I would rather discourage you from using tabs because I've never met in any style guide to use tabs for Bosh, but whether you use 2 or 4 doesn't matter, and end of the topic. So the summary is just apply common sense, be consistent with what you see, not much, as you see. There are actually more sources of information that could be found regarding Bosh. One of them is UUOC, useless use of cat, that could be sometimes found in our code. It is just to prevent you from abusing our pets. Because cat, by documentation, is to concatenate files. It is not to pass single file to some other command. So very easily we could replace such code like cat file grep pattern with just grep pattern in a file, right? Just remember it, pretty simple advice. There is another letter going around the internet that says, don't use kill -9. Kill -9 doesn't give a chance for the process to clean up, to shut down gracefully, to clean the sockets. And the proper actually approach is to send normal kill, wait a second or two. If it doesn't work, send the kill with 2, right? Which is more aggressive, but still not kill -5. It gives a chance to do final cleanup. And if it doesn't work, just remove the binary. If it doesn't respond to normal kill within reasonable amount of time, this is not the valid application. You should fix it. And yes, I agree. So our application should close gracefully. So this is summarized as using combine harvester just to tidy up the flower pot. So a very aggressive machine to do simple thing. There is one command I'd like to add to this rule. We should test our applications to handle kill -9. So we shouldn't use it on daily basis because our apps should be responsive, but kill -9 may always happen. For example, we take out electricity plug, and what will happen there? We cannot rely on fresh cleanup and graceful socket disconnection, right? So we should know how our application handles that. And there is advice from Clement. He was speaker on GeeCON some time ago on the previous editions, that in general, after knowing all those weaknesses of Bosh, he says, avoid Bosh. Really do it, I'm begging you. But if there is nothing else we can do about it, at least use set EUO pipefall and run shell check. We'll go back to shell check a bit later, but this EUO pipefall is known as unofficial strict mode. What it does, and actually it should be at the beginning of every Bosh script. It tells, fail fast on every error, and the default behavior is not to fail at all, right? Every command is invoked, and in case of failure, it proceeds, which we don't know from any other language. Maybe surprising. We know from the beginning, do not try to use undefined variables, and pipefall is like E, but within the pipes. So just E is not enough to errors being eaten by the pipes. So if one command fails, then another return count is overridden. So why this is so important? This could be visualized on a very simple example. Just in the script, we change the directory to some variable and remove the contents of it. And by default, Bosh will remove always, regardless whether this directory exists, whether change directory was successful or not, it will always run the second command. Only this E could prevent proceeding if change directory doesn't succeed. However, there are many gotchas. Even if we use this set minus E, on the Grayscat wiki, there is so long post that tells you when set minus E doesn't work. And we shouldn't rely on it. So all we need to be very careful, even if we have this strict mode, to not fall into the case when it doesn't work. So for one of the main examples is with local variable. If we assign and declare local variable on the same line, it will eat the error code from the function. So the recommendation is to always put them on separate lines if the command might fail. I couldn't believe that that's the truth. They did it like that. So we go back several years back when, I don't know, in Pascal or some other very basic languages, we were declaring them separately, but that's how it is in Bosh. So shells check. It is a tool that just analyzes Bash scripts and also shell scripts, POSIX, to find typical mistakes. We can easily install it with package managers, even on Windows. And it is free, available on GitHub, written in Haskell, so pretty impressive. Available on some online analyzers that could be attached to your GitHub repo. And also it is integrated with a couple of IDEs, including IntelliJ. While the easiest way to use it is just to go to shellcheck.net, paste your script, and you'll get the results. So 2 lines of code, actually 4 because I have new lines, and so many errors I made which are not immediately visible, right? For example, I've missed here the shebang. It should be starting with comment, then exclamation mark, not the other way around. Silly mistake, and shellcheck picks it. And also declaring variables should be without any spaces. With spaces, it just won't work at all. The variable won't get assigned. So we may get feedback that that's not the way how it should be done. We can click into that link and learn why it is like that in Bosh. So as I said, there is a plugin to IntelliJ that we could install, and actually you should install it latest on Monday when you get to your work and you use Bash scripting. It's just a pretty simple plugin. You after downloading shellcheck from the artifact repository, you plug it into this plugin, and then your code immediately starts to get analyzed. And I gave here several examples what could be detected by shellcheck. For example, if we forget a space before double bracket, after double brackets, generally such code looks well in IntelliJ. There are no syntax errors, but it won't work. So the shellcheck will give you immediate feedback after a fraction of a second that you made mistake. And this is how the static analysis should work. We shouldn't postpone realizing that my script doesn't work to the some testing environment or even worse production. We should learn it in a few milliseconds from making a mistake. So shellcheck highlights the line, says put the space there, we do it, and we are good to go. Then it also warns us about some quirks of Bosh. For example, false in the double square brackets returns true. I don't know why, but it is like it is. If we don't put spaces around equals equals, comparing 0 to 1 will say, yes, 0 is equal to 1, and no other errors. It will proceed. If we rely on the globbing and we put double quotes, it won't work. Script will execute without any errors, but the result will be fine. So we get this feedback. Same array with commas is valid syntax, but it doesn't create an array. We should learn it as soon as possible. And I've noticed a tweet from Alexander Tarasikov that this guy noticed shellcheck is awesome. It's a great tool. It points you out so many issues that you can make immediately. However, the general idea after using this tool, why the hell we are still using this language? There are so many strange things that could go wrong that are not existing in another language that probably this is not the good choice. GeeCON wiki also says about whitespace formatting. Generally, it gives us breathing space, so our scripts are more readable. So there is a plugin that is called Bosh support for IntelliJ that you should install it as well, and it has hidden formatter for the Bosh. So I know many people that just struggle and format manually because they don't know that after installing this plugin you should go there and put this tiny tick there as an experimental feature to enable formatter, and now Ctrl-Alt-L works in IntelliJ, and you don't need to think about this whitespace anymore. It just happens immediately. The same plugin also supports us with adding shebunks. We don't need to remember them by heart. It also gives us some syntax completion because sometimes it's really tricky to remember everything. However, the defaults, in my opinion, the default inspections that are built into the Bosh support are not the best choice. For me, this inspection simple variable usage doesn't make sense. Some may like, but I don't see benefits, so you may disable it. And in my opinion, there are two important ones, like using backticks is not the problem according to the default settings, while I recommended you to enable it. So then by Alt-Enter IntelliJ, you just change backticks to this dollar parenthesis, and it takes half a second to do it. You don't need to do it manually. You could ask, what about debugging in Bosh? Is it possible? And the first advice I may give you is that the best debugging advice is to write simple code. Because in general, debugging is hard. So if you write your shell script or any other script as clever as you can, you won't be able, by definition, to debug it. So this is the first rule, applies to actually any language. And I was surprised to notice that the majority resources on the internet about Bosh debugging just recommend you echoes or T's or print formatted for debugging. Actually, it is their eternal advice. System out print line, it will work for you. However, there are a couple more things we could do in Bosh. 3 modes. Set -n, which does not invoke the script at all, just check the syntax. Set -v, verbose mode, prints every command before execution, so you know exactly where in the script you are. And -x, to print results of each command. So by enabling 3 of those, or at least X and V, we'll get full debug info. If we want line numbers in this output, we need to modify PS4 variable. That's how the command line in Linux works. All right, and there are more options to do it. Instead of set, we could invoke the command bosh -xv or other parameter script, or we could put it directly after the shebang and the behavior's equivalent. We could also manipulate those in the script. If we want to just debug the part of the script, we put -x and then +x to disable debugging in the middle. And I should say that actually there is some better debugger that has breakpoints and could stop and resume the code. It is Bosh debugger, but it is not maintained, and I was not able to use it by myself, but maybe some people claim they managed to run it and debug the Bosh scripts. But hopefully if you write simple stuff, you won't ever need it. And I was really worried to notice that in general, people care about quality in JVM languages, but they completely forget about it when they have a task to write anything in Bosh, right? So we don't think about testing, we don't think about TDD. Manual testing is a standard all around the world. And if we test it, we do it manually, just by passing 1 to scenarios, and we consider it as a done. Sounds bad, right? And it is bad. So we shouldn't have such approach even if you're writing script. As those guides were telling, we should put even more attention to the Bosh scripts. This means also include testing, more testing than usual, because so many things may go wrong. And you may hear that there is some unit testing that is possible in the Bosh. I was on the similar talks on the other conferences, and it was something really fancy, that there are some unit testing framework. I wasn't using it, but there is. You should use it. Yeah, I won't tell you how, but there are frameworks available. This was the conclusion from the other talks that I had. Then I tried to do unit testing of the Bosh by myself, and I noticed I don't know how. Why? Because unit testing is for isolated code. If you have isolated function, then unit testing is fine. But typical Bosh script involves choosing some executables, invoking them in the right order, passing the valid parameters, and the actual unit testing is not possible at all if the logic is mixed with side effects. And the Bosh is mostly about side effects. If your code is written in that way that it is unit testable, then you shouldn't use Bosh for that task. Most probably you just need integration testing for the Bosh. How to do it? Just invoke the script. Yeah, on some, ideally on some different environment before the production. So prepare this environment and just run the script with all the possible parameters. Watch for the results. You may use Docker for it, just to have this production-like environment prepared. You may also use Jenkins workspace. Do not hard-code the paths within the script, just pass them as a parameters and then configure it to whatever temporary directory you may have there. So generally, I won't be talking about unit testing in Bosh because it is exception. This is applicable only if you write some framework in the Bosh, which you shouldn't do in 99% of the cases. If you need TDD or unit testing, you are using the wrong language. Use Kotlin, Groovy, Python, whatever language where unit testing is well defined, and those are languages where your logic actually should be. So some final thoughts. There are tools for Bosh, especially for IntelliJ. There are a couple of plugins you should enable. Leverage them so that you learn the language and avoid mistakes. And what happens in my case, I see that the Bosh scripts that we wrote are working for years on production, and hopefully they will continue without any issues. We've seen that problems we may have could be pretty serious, so a lot of attention is needed. Definitely you need to learn Bosh, follow either one style guide or choose a couple for your team. Use shell check, use this Bosh support, and rather go into the direction of integration testing. Thank you very much. Now it's the time for questions. We still have a couple of minutes. Okay, at most 10 minutes. And the first top voted question, is there any IDE for Bosh? Actually, there are a couple. Personally, I'm using IntelliJ with the plugins. I know also pretty good alternative to IntelliJ, which is Visual Studio Code. There is, sorry? Vim. And Vim, yes. There are also plugins. For example, there is shell check for the for the Vim, and it works. For sure, there are also other plugins that have similar functionalities, like code completion. You may also plug into Vim formatter. I know. So there are many. So depending on what you like. For sure, IntelliJ, Visual Studio Code, and Vim are the choices. Also other like atom will be good as well. Where would you draw the line between using a low-level scripting language, Bosh, and higher-level scripting language, Python? So actually, Google Style Guide draws this line. It says 100 lines or using arrays, so or using business logic, right? So general Bosh is just to invoke a couple of commands, run something, and that's it. If there is something that needs to be unit tested, for example, use other language. There is no very strict line. Sometimes we in our repositories have, I don't know, 150 lines of Bosh code, and it is there to follow convention, but rather as an exception than a rule. All right? Do you think that Bosh will be replaced by something, or maybe it will forever be invincible language for scripting? So Bosh was first introduced in early 90s. It is with us for 30 years, and actually initial Bourne shell is since 70s, and entire syntax is since 70s, meaning it is for 50 years already. And it is in pretty good shape. Actually, this shell check tool formatters are the inventions of the recent years, only 5. So it's living. There is community, I have impression, is even bigger. They put more effort to make it better language. Also, there are new versions released. So I think now only it gets maturity that it is somehow usable, because before you needed to learn books to know that there are many strange things about it. Right now we can use tools to automate those checks. So I think it will be for many years, at least 50 more. Maybe there will be some revolution by introducing new standard for the scripting, but for sure it won't be everywhere. Bosh is almost everywhere right now in every system, and for the new language to be everywhere probably it will take 50 years. So probably will be not coding anymore when it happens. All right, is there a way how to work with multi-line variables? Many line. Okay, interesting. Okay, I know what you mean. So new lines inside the strings, probably. Actually, there's some here doc in the Bosh that you may have multi-line variables, which is useful for help information. It has some tricky stuff. You need to read about it. You need to validate through shell check to not make any mistake, but there are here doc in Bosh. And generally, you can put \n and it will print new line. Because printf works the same like in C language and very similar as in Java language. You can use the same syntax, so there are multi-line variables. All right, hope I answered all the questions. Thank you very much, and I'm available here for several minutes more. Let's discuss. Thank you.